This podcast is brought to you by Barry's Tea. Family owned since 1901, Barry's Tea have spent many years perfecting their blends, and for me, Barry's Tea is the best tasting tea in Ireland. I really like the Barry's Tea Master Blend. That's the one in the black box. It's crafted with the expertise of their master blender, who told me personally they only use their highest quality leaves for a richer, full-bodied flavour. It's one for the true tea connoisseurs. Barry's Tea also brings with it a sense of home, belonging and connection. Just one sip of Barry's Tea and you're home. So stick the kettle on, make a cup of Barry's Tea and enjoy the podcast. So welcome to Roasted with myself, Mark Moriarty, where I chat to notable people like the lady in front of me about their lives through the wonderful world of food and drink. My guest today is one of Ireland's best known broadcasters and the host of shows such as, and you can fill me on anything I've missed, Operation Transformation, The Voice and No Frontiers were sort of the top three I picked out. Kathryn Thomas, thanks so much for joining us today.
It is so good to be sitting and having a chat with you.
Yeah, it's the sanctity of this podcast.
I know, and to be called notable at this hour of the morning. Love it.
Very, very notable. So in front of you, Kathryn, you have a little bite around the idea of ginger. So you have some pineapple with pickled ginger, some roasted sesame and a little bit of coriander.
You know the way to my heart, my friend.
You can eat that, and then I want you to describe in detail to me why the ingredient you chose was ginger.
Okay.
Because a lot of people who've listened to this podcast will know that people send essays and emails of 2 pages of things they like. I liked that I just got from you WhatsApp, ginger.
I think it's just, I'm in a ginger zone at the moment. I've always loved it. I love eating ginger on sushi. I'm one of those people who's like more ginger than sushi. I love that sort of aromatic. I love Thai food. I love ginger in a curry. I love ginger in a stir fry. So yeah, I think I was just like, maybe when you text me, I was just planning what I was having for dinner, which included ginger last night. I made a curry and I was like, ginger is my favourite thing at the moment. So I just lash it all in.
You lash it in for people who are listening. So Kathryn has thrown that into her mouth. Pickled ginger is really, really good. And I love the ginger juice as well that comes from the packet. I'd use that in seasoning of sauces and curries and whatnot.
Ginger and pineapple.
Simple and clean, isn't it?
Love that. That is absolutely delicious. Can I have the other one?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. Talk to me about food in your life. I get a sense that you cook a lot and food is a big part of your life.
I love food. I'm assuming this is a podcast that you can actually eat and talk at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love food. I've always had a great appetite. And I think, particularly, I suppose, because in the last sort of decade, I have been the person who has been associated with health or weight loss, maybe more so with Operation Transformation. And in a way, kind of never really sits comfortably with me that I'm kind of like the poster girl for weight loss. Do you know what I mean? Because I am somebody who is so about health and so about good food. And so I think people think that I kind of eat quite meagerly or quite, whereas I'm all about, great food, lots of it, really healthy food, really indulgent, delicious food, once or twice a week. I'm married to a restaurateur. So for me, like, it's the greatest thing. I mean, I often say that when I'm out for dinner, it's one of the greatest enjoyments in my life. When I'm at a table with my family, it is that big sit down, and I often think like that I was sort of Italian in a former life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is nothing that gives me that same pleasure. It used to be out clubbing and dancing and whatever else, whereas now it is food and like the tastes and the enjoyment and the social aspect and the wine and everything that goes with it. I just think there's no greater pleasure in life.
Do you cook at home?
Yes, I do. I wouldn't say I am the greatest cook in the world, but I am somebody who believes if you can read, you can cook. And I had your cookbook out the other day, and I have loads of great cookbooks. We've got an office in our house. We turned the spare bedroom into an office during COVID and whatever, and all my books went up there. But I have a full shelf all of cookbooks. So my friends and family know down through the years, they buy me cookbooks, and they know that I like to kind of just think of something for the weekend. Yeah. So I love to cook. And my mom was a great cook back in the day, still is. And it's something that's always been a part of my life. Like my mom we grew up in Carlow, and there was 3 of us for a long time, and there's 13 years between myself and my brother, my youngest brother. So he kind of was the little afterthought. So
a very polite way of saying it.
We've called him a lot worse, let me tell you. But so there was 3 of us in the house for a long time growing up. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was a teacher, but when family started, she stayed at home. And she was just a great cook. She learned to cook. She wasn't great when she got married first, but she learned to cook and she taught herself. So again, we grew up with nothing really was packaged. Everything was done from scratch. There was the odd jar of sauce here and there, but most of all, it was all fresh, home cooked. And I really admire her, and it's one of the things that we talk about now. Like, I'm so grateful that was the diet that we grew up with. That was the food that was in our lives. And also, Carlow, if people will know, there's the technical college is down in Carlow. So when my dad's business went bust, and they were in an awful lot of trouble, we took students into our house. So at one stage, for years, like I would say maybe 4 years, there was 7 students in our house. We all moved up into the attic. So myself and my brother and my sister were living in the attic room. And listen, it was converted, it was nice, but we moved into that part.
Still the attic.
It was still the attic. And my mom had 7 students in the 3 bedrooms downstairs. And she cooked for the 7 of them, the 3 of us, and me and my dad. So what's that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people.
It's a full restaurant every night.
Every night. So she did breakfast and she did dinner every night.
Wow.
And to see her in action in the kitchen was just like, you never appreciate it at the time when you're a young one, but how she was able to kind of plate up kind of that amount of food on a 4-ring stove. Like we had a Stanley cooker as well. So there was just always pots on the go, There
was a lot going on in your childhood then.
Yeah, it was busy, and it was again, it was like a time that I look back on because there were so many different students coming in and out of the house. So students that we would have made friends with, students that would have babysat us. Again, they were kind of doing their own thing. They were coming and going. We were probably, a bane of their life. Of course, all we wanted to do was kind of, go down and hang out with them and play with them. They wanted to go out drinking and, down to Scraggs Alley, the pub in Carlow, which was the kind of the mecca for all students. But we stayed in touch with a few of them afterwards, and they will always have said my mom's cooking was one of the greatest pleasures about living in the house. So that I always think is really nice. And I think I don't ever actually give my mom enough credit for that, being the mother of 2 girls now, and like you're rustling together a bit of salmon and rice and firing it onto a plate most evenings, And when I actually think of the effort that she went to deliver that much good food to so many people,
Would you say you're like her?
I would say I'm more like my dad in personality, but my mother is a can-do woman. So maybe from that perspective, I'd like to think that I'm a can-do woman. I don't know if I could have done, 12 dinners 5 nights a week for that many people. But I love a challenge, and I do love to cook, and I do think I got that from her. My dad, it would be not the greatest cook in the world. Oh, he's going to kill me for saying that. He can do a good Barbary duck breast. That's his claim to fame, but that's about it. But I enjoy cooking, and I love the pleasure that food gives me.
From the outside looking in, I would say you're an incredibly busy woman, and I know family at home. So how do you balance all that?
Good childcare. We have a great woman by the name of Susie who looks after our girls, has looked after Ellie since she was 8 weeks old, and has looked after Grace since she was probably about 3 months old. And I know we were chatting before you came on. You've got little Lily who came into the world a bit earlier than you thought. I'm
starting to learn very, very quickly how all this works.
I can't believe you're actually sitting up still awake. Fucking hell. But I just think with the way that I don't have, and I'm not as busy as I think people might think. I mean, I have my finger in lots of different pies, but I also have flexibility with the work that I do. So I always ensure that I have enough time with the girls. Right now, the greatest joy in life, apart from eating, honestly, is walking my girls to school every day. Yeah. So I have the privilege to be able to do that, and I don't really start my day until 9:45. So that means we're up, we have breakfast together, and we just have that lovely part of the day. That works for me right now. And we have a great childminder, as I said. She is from Mauritius, and the food that so I drop to Susie. So it's 8 until 5 is her hour. So we pick up at 5 o'clock, but she always gives the girls so they come home from, they finish school and then they go up to Susie, and she will do a home cooked meal for all the kids.
Right.
So when I'm telling you, these kids are eating lentil dal, curry, chapatis, like I'm kind of raging when they come out and say what they've had, because I'm like, any chance there was an L box for me? Go out the door. So it's great that they have this wide variety of flavours as well, and food. And it's in one way it kind of has taken the cooking away from me in the evening in one way, because with the new Healthy Schools programme, they get their lunch, and they have their hot lunch. Ellie has her hot lunch in school, and then she will get a meal with her childminder. So it means then I'm really only kind of doing snacks or a little bit of soup or whatever in the evening if they're hungry enough for that, but it's more kind of like a snack plate in the evening. So they are getting Ellie is getting 2 hot meals a day before she comes home to me. So it's kind of taking the pressure off as a parent, I suppose, for right now, how we currently are at, which means that's why I love cooking all the more at the weekend. Yeah. So in the evening, I'm just cooking for myself and Porrick, really. And at the weekends, then I cook for the family.
I assume it was a big change when they arrived then, and the whole world turned upside down. And
you look like a man who's saying that from experience.
But you obviously had a big structure, obviously, with your career and stuff, and then kids come along. And is it a massive change now, looking back on the last few years?
You know, it is the greatest privilege to be a parent, and it is the greatest joy. And for sure, change came into our day-to-day life. But you know, did it change who I am? And when I'm asked this, I'm kind of like, you know, because I hear a lot of women go, oh my God, it changed me completely, and I have a completely different perspective. I don't know if it changed me as much as maybe I thought it would or it might. I'm very focused on the work that I do. I'm still very focused on my friendships, on my relationships. It has brought me the greatest joy in my life for sure. But I think I'm a better mom because I'm continuing to do what I do in terms of work, you know, whether that's my TV work, whether it's my radio work, or whether it's my own business. I run a fitness business called Pure Results, and lots of other the corporate bits and bobs that I do as well. So that is so fulfilling to me because I have a career that's quite diverse, that's quite, no one day is the same. Yeah. So, and then I get to, you know, parent my kids as well. And I might be off on a Thursday and a Friday. One week, I'll collect the girls from school and we'll go off and we'll do stuff. So, we have our mornings together. So I feel very grateful, to be honest, Hun, that I have the flexibility to work the way I want at the moment. That is not always going to be the case. I understand that.
It's nice to hear here. It's like sometimes when it all changes, you're like, how am I ever going to get career going and keep everything kind of all the plates spinning?
Yeah. No, I'm trying to go back to like 6-week-old. Yeah. Being the parent of a 6-week-old where you are at the moment. And it does feel like, holy God, when is life ever going to return again? But you know, it does. And it just has an added arm of joy to it. Not to say that it's not stressful and, you know, hard and sleep deprived and all of that. And I don't know, particularly for me, like I had Grace when she was when I was 42. So like I'm 45 now. So having children later in life as well, that comes with its own challenges. You know, I mean, myself and Porrick were certainly not spring chickens.
What are those challenges?
I think it is, well, definitely you're more tired. Yeah. Like if you can actually believe that sitting here right now.
Yeah. Makes sense though.
But as well, like as you know, if you're running around and you're a mom in your 30s, it's different to running around and being a mom in your 40s. Yeah. And it's certainly different to be running around and being a dad in your 50s. Like Porrick is 50. I keep calling him Rod Stewart. You know, he was like knocking out children when he was like 70, whatever. And Porrick is like, yeah, he is a multi-millionaire with about 16 nannies and he's never at home. Like, there's a vast difference. I
didn't know that. I didn't know the age, yeah.
Yeah, so, and actually we were in a shop yesterday. We were doing a bit of a food shop and I walked through the baby section of clothes and I just went, oh God, I'd love another one. And he acted actually like he didn't hear me. He heard exactly what I said. And he just bolted. He was like, straight to the fruit and veg. Get me out of here. So yeah, no, our work is definitely done from a family perspective. But also it brings another perspective as well, because we have, Connor is my stepson. So Porrick had Connor when he was in his 20s. So Connor is 27, 28 now. So again, it's, there was
Didn't know that either.
Yeah, there was so many pros and so many benefits of being a young dad to son. And then there's also kind of so many benefits and pros to being an older dad when you have more life experience, Porrick would say. So,
and you all get on?
Oh, like a house on fire. Yeah. Connor is amazing. His mother, Jackie, is incredible. She's an amazing mom. She's raised two great boys, and and Connor is great to his sisters. So it's a lovely bond. We see each other all the time, he generally comes over when I'm cooking, like any 20-something-year-old, just coming over for the grub. He'll come in, say his piece, eat and drink, play the guitar, and we'll see him the following weekend.
Nice. Take me back to your childhood. So school lunch boxes. What would you have had in your school lunch box?
We would have had sandwiches, probably ham, cheese, tomato. We would have had a penguin bar was always the treat. A penguin bar.
Do they still make them?
I don't know. I'd imagine they do. Yeah. And then a little bit of fruit. So again, my mom would have been quite not strict. We would have had the boxes of juice and stuff like that as well. Stuff now that, my girls wouldn't be allowed to bring into school. The school that they're in is a kind of a no sweets policy, which I am a big supporter of. But I remember kind of looking longingly, like dribbling into other people's lunchboxes at like the crisps and the, all the other nice bits and pieces. Like, the penguin bar should have been fine, but I always remember looking enviously into everybody else's lunchbox. It was a bit like when we went over to other people's houses for dinner. Yeah. Like it was the waffles, you were like loving the waffles, the fish fingers, the chips, the ketchup, and so
you didn't have any of that.
We did probably more at the weekends,
And so, did you enjoy school?
I did, yeah. We were in a very small primary school, and there was, myself and my brother. There's only a year between us. He's a year older, and then my sister is 3 years younger. So again, really happy childhood, great school. Our cousins lived across the road from us, and my grandmother and grandfather lived next door. And my grandmother, this on my dad's side, was the best chef, like bar none. That's including you, Mark Moriarty. She was incredible. She lived in a big old house and had a kitchen in the basement and had an agate that was like the length of the Nace dual carriageway. When you're a child, it just kind of had like 6 different doors on it. It was like the whole span of the kitchen. And what that woman couldn't make, couldn't bake, couldn't create, she was incredible. So we'd always love when my mom and dad would go away for a weekend, because we'd just go through the hedge with your plastic bag, with your pajamas, your knickers and your toothbrush in it, across the hedge into her. And then it would just be this like culinary experience for the whole weekend. She made homemade shoe buns with cream and jam. She did homemade brown bread. The food that she served up was amazing. Probably one of my earliest childhood memories was me sitting at the big table, and she set the table properly. It was like the proper mat and the knives and forks and the coaster for the glass, and everybody kind of sat down together. Like for her, it was always like a ritual. Eating was a beautiful family ritual. And I remember, and my grandfather always wore like the shirt and the tie and the waistcoat and the suit, like was never not in the full 3-piece suit. And I remember thinking that I was having ham, and it was ham and parsley sauce and potato and cabbage or whatever. And it was only afterwards she said, "Well, did you enjoy it?" And I said, "Yeah, I thought that was really nice." And she said, "Well, what if I told you that it wasn't ham, that it was cow's tongue?" And I nearly vomited on myself. I was like, "Oh, like I was like actual proper tongue." And
it's
I
often
remember
the idea of it.
Jesus. And I remember then she brought me in, and in her freezer she had all sorts of, like, my dad loves kidneys to this day.
Yeah.
So my grandfather loved like any sort of offally stuff. So she'd a whole freezer
Full anatomy.
full of bits of bobs, yeah. So the cow's tongue, I remember it was kind of blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lovely. It's like corned beef. Really, really nice.
Yeah. So
Going back to the school piece though, like, because obviously you go into this amazing media career. Did you always know? Was that always the plan?
oh God, no. I wanted to go to Hollywood. I was going to be an actress. I was going to, win Hollywood. I was going to be in, like, big, huge feature films. I loved speech and drama in school. I had a great teacher called Mary Doyle. And so that was where I was going. And then my dad and my mom being the teacher, and my nana on my mom's side was huge on education. And they were like, no, you can do whatever you want, but get the piece of paper, get the degree. So I ended up doing arts in UCD and did that for a year, and basically just sat in the bar the entire time. And I worked 2 part-time jobs. I had a job in the Haddington Road Cafe. I think it was Haddington Cafe it was called. A great guy called Brian Kennedy who used to run that. And I was the worst waitress in the world as well. I kept dropping things and spilling things. I wasn't very good. And then I was doing voluntary work in a lot of the TV production companies around Dublin. So
with a view to getting
with a view to kind of just getting close to film, or
closer to Hollywood.
And it was in the basement of Coco Television when I was labeling videotapes of presenters that were going for these roles. I said, I can do this. Oh, like, this is easier than acting. All you've got to do is be yourself, right? So acting, you've got to channel and get into being somebody else, whereas presenting, you just got to be yourself. So I insisted. I kind of stalked them really enough that they gave me a go of doing a pilot or a casting for a show, and that's kind of how it happened. So I started doing... First show was Rapid with Jason Sherlock. You didn't mention that one.
That was
100 million years ago.
Before my time.
That was before your time. Yeah. So I did my Leaving Cert in 97, went to college in 98. So I would have started Rapid in 99.
Okay, yeah.
And just got this job. Knew nothing about sport. I kind of liked a bit of running and a bit of football. But then I was paired with Jason Sherlock, who was the kind of the male presenter who'd been signed and contracted, and they were looking for a female presenter, co-presenter.
Jason probably didn't know what he was doing either.
Well, do you know what? He was he was the pin-up at the time. Like, he was like the Brian O'Driscoll of the football world at the time. He was like... I
do remember that now, late 90s. He was
the kingpin.
Whirlwind.
Yeah. And I remember him sitting down when I met him, and we met him actually in UCG, and he was like, oh, so what sort of sport are you into? And I was like, go-karting? Like, that was, I didn't really know anything about any sport. So that quickly kind of turned into like a really solid friendship. We did the show for 3 years.
What was it?
A sports show, a kids' sports show. So we would go to different schools and we'd look at different sports in different communities, whether it was GAA, whether it was horse racing, go-karting, but we travelled a lot with the show as well. So we went over with the New England Patriots. We were down with the All Blacks in New Zealand. We were in South Africa, shark diving with great white sharks. I mean, I was 22, maybe 22 at the time. Like, I was taking a year out of college, which is what I said to my folks. Yeah. Oh, listen, this is just going to be a flash in the pan.
Before we get back to arts.
Before we get back to, finishing the degree. I never went back, obviously. But did that show for a long time. But again, we just fell into the roles of, I was extreme sports girl and he was Mr. Know-it-all sport.
Okay.
So, but it was amazing. Like, we got to travel. But that was where I really I felt my love of sport grew, my understanding of it, the power of it, seeing kids in school, the impact of, good sporting facilities, good sporting coaches, a good sporting kind of community.
Thank you to Barry's Tea for supporting this podcast. Barry's Tea holds a special place in people's hearts, not just because it tastes amazing, but because as Irish people, Barry's Tea is one of those special things that connects us to home and that sense of belonging. We drink it in cafes, restaurants, at book clubs. We even bring it on our holidays and drink it all over the world. No matter where you are or what you're doing, one sip of Barry's Tea and you're home. I can see it now where you ended up, based on that first experience, where it went. But like in terms of, were you just winging it?
Oh,
it's like turn the camera on there and we'll figure it out.
Wing it, and I'm still winging it.
Now you winged it into, and this is what I really want to ask you about, literally the greatest job of all time.
Yeah.
I have it down in my notes here. No Frontiers.
Yeah.
The greatest job in television.
Yeah.
And even as a kid, I used to watch you in No Frontiers and go, how do I get that job? How do I do that?
Yeah.
So you did it for
10 years.
You travelled to
everywhere. There's not a continent that we didn't travel to. So, and I started that job when I was 21 and finished traveling with No Frontiers at 31.
How did
so
you
a
get
decade.
the job?
Again, I was working on Rapid. I was working on the sports program, and again, just by the very nature of our personalities, and Jason being the more sporty interviewer type, I basically was just kind of, you can throw me out of anything, throw me out of an airplane, throw me off a bridge, put me in a cage with a shark. Like, that is where I'm happy. That is where I come alive. Like, any adventure, anything that's kind of crazy, wild, just sort of fed into my little 20-year-old personality. And so that was the sort of the my TV persona. That's what I became, and that's what I was. So at that time, the whole Use It had just started. So that sort of traveling through Southeast Asia, people going away on their gap year. That had just
these are the J1s,
all the J1s. Yeah. So all that was happening, and No Frontiers was already on, but they were doing a lot of sort of package holidays. So they asked me to come on board to go and put a backpack on my back. And basically, I'll never forget it.
And you said,
I said, literally, we were in the Leeson Lounge. I ordered a pint of Bulmers this was the meeting. And it was a Friday evening. And I met the producer and the director. And they said, listen, this is what we're after. This is what we think you'd be a great fit. I said, 100%. I didn't ask about the time. I didn't ask about the money. I didn't ask about anything. I just said, yeah, I'm in. And
we could talk. You've literally written a book on it, but tell me, like, what would a week filming No Frontiers look like?
Like, it would depend on where you were going. It was so diverse, so incredibly exciting, all done on a shoestring budget, because when I started, as I said, I was going to do the backpacking role, right? So we would get maybe 300 quid and we'd go off for a week to... It could be to Africa, it could be to Central America, it could be to South America, it could be, the first trip we did was up to Lapland, up to Finnish Lapland, and we were living in an igloo up there. I mean, I was 21. Like, this was the
And
most
also, it's all about you, because there was no real interviews in that show, or obviously you show nice shots, but you carry the whole thing.
Yeah, and it was, it was easy to do that, because I have a love of travel, I have a love of travel. I have a love of adventure anyway. So being able to just relay that, and I was just, I would say those first 2 years, I couldn't believe my luck. I couldn't believe my luck. I was living in Rathmines with 7 girls at the time. And like, we were I'd come home from these amazing trips and we'd have a pot noodle and then we'd head out into Night Owls of Ranelagh, or, you know what I mean? And like, that was the student life.
Yeah.
Whereas I was coming back from all these places, nobody wanted to talk to me about where I was. It was just about who was going out and where could you get the cheapest student drink. But while they were having that college experience, I was having a kind of a different educational experience by travelling to the places that I was.
Would they just tell you, okay, this is the flight, you're heading to South America, you're heading to Antarctica?
Yeah, for those first 2 years, I worked with amazing directors. I worked with a great guy called Ruan McGann. I worked with a great girl called Judy Kelly, who I'm actually currently doing a new documentary with at the moment. So 24 years later, we're back together. And again, it would just be you and a director. So there'd be no sound man, there'd be no producer, there'd be you'd be shooting on a small camera, because the places that we were going to, whether it was, Argentina, Colombia, whether it was Mali, Senegal, you wanted to go in as kind of touristy as possible. We had no brief. There was no mobile phones back in the day. You were literally had your Lonely Planet, a couple of £100 and off you went.
Turn the camera on, off you go.
Yeah, and we were sleeping on the roof of mud huts. We were sleeping in hostels. It was just the most incredible experience. And I suppose after those 2 years, I realised the show had the momentum. It was connecting with the audience. And I said, okay, this is a career. I need to take this very seriously. I need to really kind of hone my craft.
You had a light bulb moment on that where you go,
Yeah. Well, you can go like, it's your responsibility to bring this experience into somebody who's sitting in an armchair in Roscommon
Yep.
or West Cork or my nana. My nana lived in Raheny. She's dead now, God rest her. But she used to love watching it because she was like, I can travel the world with you by just being in my sitting room, you know?
Nice.
And so that was kind of, I'll never forget when she said that. I was like, I have a real responsibility here. So it was amazing to work with the people that I worked with because everybody had their own style of directing. Everybody had their own vision. I learned how to use the cameras. I was then able to shoot myself. And then I went off with, you know, myself with various charity organisations. I'd do trips to Africa myself and I'd shoot stuff. So it was just a really exciting time, you know, and I was...
give me like the wildest story and the funniest story.
Oh, God.
And I haven't prepped Kathryn on this, but are there
God.
two standout moments where you go, I can't believe that happened, or that was absolutely wild?
Well, we did a trip to the Antarctic, which was insanely amazing and incredibly humbling. We were on an old scientific research vessel. So now I think there's trips that are quite fancy and quite, you know, luxurious and salubrious. We were on like literally this old Russian shipping vessel.
How'd you get where from?
So we flew to Argentina, we flew to Buenos Aires, and then you get another flight down to Ushuaia. And Ushuaia is the very south of Argentina. And it is literally, it's like no man's land. It's like the last point before you then go across the Drake Passage. And I would have been a big Shackleton fan. And the story of Ernest Shackleton and how he... how his ship, the Endurance, got stuck in the ice. A lot of people will know this story. And then how he had to go on a rescue mission and he rescued his entire fleet of his team. So anyway, I had always been a fan because he was from Athy, so us being from Carlow. So he'd always been my kind of hero. So to get to go to the Antarctic was like the dream. And then going across the Drake Passage and then landing in Antarctica it was just beyond wild. You know, there were these icebergs that like don't look like icebergs that you know, they're these just huge big blue mountains. To be able to go and walk amongst the seals, amongst the penguins, camping on the ice. So there was only 4 of us on the boat that actually then decided we would pitch tent and camp on the ice. And it's bright. When we were there, it was bright the entire time because it never, the time that we went, it never gets dark.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like 22 hours of daylight. So it's sort of this crazy alternative universe anyway. And
when you say humbling, it was humbling. Oh.
It was humbling because it's like being on a different planet.
Okay.
That was what it was like because there was no people. I mean, we had been everywhere from Papua New Guinea up the Himalayas. We'd traveled right across Africa where you're experiencing culture and people and all of that, which I love. But this was just like it was like a lonely planet in one way, because it was just you and nature, and very few people obviously have been or had been. So it was just waking up in your tent, and you know, because you had to go for a pee in the snow because that was, you know, but like having to kind of carefully footstep and really quietly go past this huge big family of seals who were like all just lying there outside your tent. That was amazing. That was just such a kind of a trip that I'm so grateful that I experienced, considering I suppose we are where we are with climate and we are where we are with climate change. So it was amazing to see that, you know, in all of its glory.
Feel small.
Yes. Yeah. And it was exactly that. I mean, we've had so many. Did you get in
trouble? Any trouble?
Oh God, I've talked about this story before, but yeah, we went to Papua New Guinea, and I had been tasked with producing, because I used to produce my own stories. So I wanted to go. This was very late. This was kind of probably year 8 of No Frontiers for me. So I was like, I want to go somewhere where it is completely off the beaten track. Go to, you know, because right now, like the world, there's very few places you can go in the world where you can actually, you know, disappear, if you like. So Papua New Guinea was one. And so I had done a huge amount of research, and I was responsible for bringing the team out. I was responsible for the elements that we were going to shoot. We got there. the first person we meet, I'm no word of a lie, was Dennis O'Brien, right? We flew into Port Moresby, right? And the Digicel posters were all over the place. I was like, what is the story with this, you know? And they had gone out to kind of bring Digicel to the Caribbean because they'd already kind of expanded successfully in some parts. So Papua New Guinea was their next place that they were trying to build the network. I'm like, literally, I've come to try and disappear off the world. And like, there's Dennis O'Brien, and I had done a bit of work for the Special Olympics. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he was like, sorry, what are you doing here? He was like, please don't tell me that you are here to promote holidays. He was like, Port Moresby is the most dangerous city in the world.
Okay.
I was like, oh, I had omitted to research that fact. And he was like, have you any security detail with you? I'm like, but that's Mark, my cameraman, and here's Ruth, my director, and it's just the three of us. So he couldn't believe it. He was like, Kathryn, more people die here than die in Mexico per capita. He was like, this is not a safe place for people to be walking around. So he then insisted on like giving us his, like he had any of the Irish staff who were out there to build the office, whatever, they all had security. Like nobody went anywhere without security. So I was like, oh God, right. Anyway, so he gave us we're here now. And he gave us his security details number, and he gave us a satellite phone. So I was like, well, we're going off up to the Gulf region and we're going off upriver for 4 days, you know, to try and find this old deserted gold mine. He was just like, oh my God, what are you doing? So anyway, got the number, got the phone.
And wasn't No Frontier supposed to be like promoting places Irish people could go and follow in your footsteps?
Well, I argued back. I said, you know, but we've got to open, it's aspirational travel as well.
Okay.
You've got to like show people parts of the world that, you know, it might not be Torremolinos, but it's certainly worth learning about. You know,
So
there's 800 different tribes in Papua New Guinea. There's only 2 roads, right? Everything else you've got to go by river. And so anyway, we head off, and there's a mountain called Mount Wilhelm, which is the same height as Mont Blanc. And I literally got me and the crew to get off the plane, have a shower, and we started climbing Mount Wilhelm, right? I hadn't told the crew that it's actually as high as the highest mountain in Europe. So anyway, off we went. Got to the top. Well, 2 out of 3 of us got to the top of the mountain. We were sort of delirious with the tiredness. But anyway, the second part of the trip was we were trying to find this old deserted gold mine that nobody had ever been to before. And as I said, there's 800 different tribes in Papua New Guinea. And we had guides ourselves that we had hired from Port Moresby. We were crossing through tribal land. We didn't really understand the repercussions of not asking for permission to cross through different tribal land. There was this huge, big flowing river. The 4 guides, Ruth and Mark, like my director and my cameraman, they had all gone across river holding onto this rope. So everyone was like, the camera was going across on a rope, and everyone was holding on for dear life as the fast rapids of the river were going this way. I was like, if health and safety could see us now, or that we would be in trouble. So everyone went across, and Mark set us up his camera to shoot me coming across on the other side. And I was standing there on the shore of the river, and the next thing I just hear this screaming, and I literally turned, and out of the corner of my eye, I just saw this guy coming, running at me. And he was just wearing his loincloth, and he had this huge machete, this giant knife. And his teeth, because out there a lot of the tribal people eat betel nut, which is this kind of red, it's like a stimulant, you know. Anyway, so he was racing towards me with this knife in the air, and I just went, and I looked at him, and I looked down, I looked across the river, and there was just this fear, and I said, this is where I'm going to lose my life. This is where I'm actually going to, like, this is where it's all going to end. And in a way I thought, oh my God, like, you know, I thought I would have a different reaction. I thought like I would fight or, you know, run or scream. But it was all of a sudden the fear just overcame me. And I just remember bowing my head, and I could feel him running at me, and I could feel the knife. And then he just was screaming in my ear, and all I could feel was this spit on my face as he was screaming. And one of the guides was coming back across the river on the rope to try and kind of help me out. And anyway, everybody was talked down. Calm was restored, but everyone had to come back across the river, and he had a problem. He was like, what are you doing on my land? There was no permission granted. You didn't come and talk to the chief. You didn't come and talk to anybody. So they took all of our water for 4 days. They took watches. They took anything that they could take. Now, they didn't take any camera gear. And we had to, you know, kind of return back the way we had come. But
Sorry, that's an absolutely wild story.
Yeah.
Do you realise how
Yeah.
wild that is?
I mean, but when I try and think about, like, you know, at that moment in time, we were on this island in the middle of nowhere and we were 4 days from civilization, and that happened. And, you know, it could have ended very differently than it did. Like, it genuinely could have ended very differently than it did.
Wow.
But I still say that was one of the best trips that we did. And that might sound odd, but it was adventure, like, and taking that bit out, obviously, but it was adventure and travel and, you know, living on your nerves and living on your wits, and kind of that real adventure travel, which is what I love and what I kind of missed for a few years doing No Frontiers. You know what I mean?
Big change to Operation Transformation then.
Yes.
So from my point of view looking in, I would have seen a lot of it. It seemed to transcend a certain decade in time where the pendulum has swung and there's been all sorts of different opinions.
Yeah.
Where it started in one place, it ended up in another place. I just want what you thought of all that.
Yeah. Well, when I took over from Jerry Ryan. So
This must have been quite a come down as well, from the Papua New Guinea adventures to Operation Transformation.
In a way, it was. I mean, the travel was incredible, you know. But when you've done it for 10 years, you've done it for 10 years, and this was. And the world had changed as well. You know, when I started at 21, there was no phones, there was very little internet. You know, we'd be in the office on Northbrook Road in Ranelagh till 12 o'clock at night trying to make phone calls to Australia if we were going down that way. You know, and then travel became accessible and easy, and the internet kind of took over a lot from travel shows in a way. So when I was asked to do Operation Transformation, Jerry Ryan was the head honcho. He had been there for 3 years. He had done it for 3 years. And then obviously, sadly and tragically, for so many different reasons, because Jerry, if someone says to me, who do you look up to as a broadcaster, I would have said Oprah and Jerry Ryan. You know, he was just the best. And what he delivered and how he connected with the Irish audience, I think as a TV presenter, that was who I looked to as my inspiration, if you like. So when I was asked to do the show, I instantly said no, because I was like, how am I going to fill those shoes? You know, that is what Jerry does. He connects with people in that way. And I had connected in the world and with people on the road and travel, but I'd never... from that personal perspective, when you were in that personal space with people, how, you know, that's a very specific role. And I
Quite
thought,
a skill.
Yeah, and I thought Jerry had that, and I was afraid that I didn't, you know, so I turned it down, and, I then had to kind of rethink it. And I said, well, look, if I'm doing it, I want to bring my own personality to it. I want to bring my own piece to it. And I said, that's the only way I can do this differently, you know. So that's what I did, and I made it my business that I was out running, I was out walking, I was out getting involved in the challenges with the leaders. And at that time, it was very weight centric. It was very much about, you know, every week we'd have 5 leaders and they'd lose weight, and that would, you know, and it was all for the benefit of their health. And then as the years evolved and as society changed, and as, you know, society and the view of health globally changed.
Huge change.
Yeah, we kind of changed with that as well. So we would have always had a psychologist, a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a GP. And so that kind of force, but again, you know, there was less of a focus then just on weight, and it was more on, okay, where are you at in your life? Where are you at in your career? What are your bloods at? How are you sleeping? So it was this kind of whole change to look at a 360 approach to health, which was just incredible, you know, and again, very relevant and needed, I would have said. So the show kind of changed and evolved to be that kind of 360 vision of health. And it was amazing to be able to, like, I had gone from going around the world to literally every week I'd be out around the country. So it was almost like going back to my rapid roots.
Yeah.
In the GAA clubs, in the schools, with the moms groups out walking, hill walking groups, hiking, swimmers, you know, and kind of really trying to get that message out there, the importance of health, the importance of exercise, the importance of good nutrition, the importance of all of us working together as a community to kind of build that. And our leaders every year came out And they personified that.
It was massive.
It was huge. And even when you think of where we finished last year, when the show finished last year, I actually got a message yesterday from Anne Cushion, who was our leader from Wexford, who was so immobile. And she just actually sent me a message. I don't have my phone on me now. She was just like, this day last year, Kathryn, I walked in to the assessment day and you turned around and asked, was I lost? Because she was, this woman on a walking stick. And I was like, there's no way she's here for Operation Transformation. She was quite kind of frail looking. And she was like, oh no, I'm here for Operation Transformation. But she said in the message, and you almost couldn't believe that it was me and that I was in the right building. So she said, you transformed, thank you for being a part of the team that helped transform my life, transform my family, and transform the country. And, you just get those messages. And there was such a love for that show.
You can tell you're quite proud of what you did on that for the 10 years.
And I did nothing. I mean, it's the leaders every year. Because I did the show for 14 years. I hosted the show for 14 years. It was on 17 altogether. So to be a part of that change, to be a part of the change of 5 people every year. And people say, did you not ever get tired of it? No, because every year 5 people put themselves forward and opened up their home, opened up their life, opened up their relationships, opened up their parenting, for all of us to have a look in, And it's like there's very few shows where you can kind of draw back the curtains and actually look into people's lives and their homes. It's a very brave thing to do. People kind of can be in a very vulnerable position when they kind of come to Operation Transformation going, look, I've had a cancer diagnosis, I've lost somebody in my life, I'm not happy, I feel stuck, my weight is creeping up, I have high blood pressure, I have type 2 diabetes, it's in my family, what do I do? There's so many different reasons that people apply for the show. And
so personal.
It's so personal.
Are you disappointed it's not there now?
I am disappointed it's not there. I feel, me personally, I couldn't have given any more, and I feel 14 years at the helm, I felt, to be honest, even the year before last, I needed to look to a different, I needed to look for different opportunities and look to different opportunities. And I felt if I didn't close the door, it would be very hard to open, it would be very hard to walk through and open another one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think from a population-based health initiative, it will be missed. I hope something comes and replaces that. I think where we are with our health at the moment in this country is frightening. I think we need population-based health initiatives. People need something to look forward to. People need to be motivated. People need education when it comes to food, when it comes to childhood obesity, when it comes to ultra-processed food that's been marketed to us left, right and centre. And I think it is really important that nobody takes their foot off the pedal when it comes to that, because we are, it's an ever-growing health crisis, right? And obesity is a part of that. We can't deny it. We can't look away from it. And I think it's really important that it is addressed, So I think Operation Transformation was playing its part in doing that. You look at what the show introduced. I would say Donal O'Shea kind of talking about the sugar tax, which was then eventually introduced, talking about calories on menus, which as a chef and even talking to my husband, it's a tricky one to navigate, But I do think it
started the conversation.
Yeah, and it's really important. Like even the fact that I have a daughter now who's in school where there's a healthy lunch policy, that's a change, right? But we can't stop there. We need to kind of make sure that our kids' health is a priority.
You haven't stopped. There's a campaign you're doing as well for connected to your daughter and health. Yes.
So basically, when Grace was 3 weeks old, she contracted RSV. And it was kind of frightening because I honestly thought, now, and I'm saying this to you as a new dad, and I don't want to frighten any new moms or dads out there, but it is important. It's kind of like we all want to mind our children's health, and we all want to make sure our kids get the best in terms of nutrition and every aspect of their health. And I think RSV is an important one to talk about because it is RSV season and it's respiratory syncytial virus. And it can be particularly problematic for babies and infants. So it doesn't really, we can all get it, but it wouldn't impact us in the same way that it can impact small kids. So it's just about being mindful of, it can be passed from person to person. So just be mindful of, ensuring that if somebody's coming into your house, you've got a new baby, right?
Yep.
Be really mindful that if somebody's coughing and spluttering, you know, you have to be
Don't come in.
And it's okay to kind of say to granny or granddad or auntie or uncle, can you actually just stay away from Baba for a few more weeks or a few more months until you're feeling better or until we can meet outside, which kind of sounds a bit like you're going back to the COVID days. But honestly,
Baby's number one.
Yeah, like Grace ended up in hospital for 3 days with RSV. I thought it was a common cold, and it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't the
How did you find out that she had it?
Because basically she was in the buggy and she was all congested, and I was at the school gate, and I didn't want to bring her in, Mark, into the doctor's waiting rooms because I thought I'd be clogging up the waiting rooms with a head cold. And one of the other moms looked into her at the buggy and said, listen, I think you should take her to the doctor. At which point I went, because I had been monitoring her temperature was fine. I had been monitoring that. And anyway, so I took her straight to Crumlin. And because she had a spike in her temperature at that point, they had to give her a spinal lumbar puncture, which was not very pleasant. No. I wasn't there for it. But then they were able to say categorically that she did have RSV. So,
it's good to know the signs.
Yeah. It's something to be mindful of if you're a new parent.
I'll finish off with one last question. Probably my favourite in this whole podcast.
Yes.
A table of 4 for a dream dinner party. You can have 4 guests, any time from history, any sphere. You haven't prepped this.
Yeah.
Who are having the 4 seats in Kathryn Thomas's?
Well, I would definitely, having said Oprah, I'd have Oprah. I'd have Jerry Ryan. I would have oh God, what's his name? Michael Palin.
Ah, yeah.
And I would probably have Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers.
Yeah. I think Joan Rivers and Jerry Ryan together would be good crack.
Be a wild party.
A wild one, yeah.
Kathryn Thomas, thank you very much for your time.
Not at all. Lovely to chat.
Absolutely. If you liked what Kathryn had to say, you can like and subscribe to the podcast. You could leave us a review or even just tell a friend about the podcast. You can watch our full conversation here on YouTube between our cups of tea and our bites at the beginning. And I will see you next time.